Now, last week, eNCA's Checkpoint ran a story about two workers who were injured on the job and their lives destroyed. Now, the law stipulates that an employer must lodge a claim with the compensation fund within 12 days of an incident. But the employers of both Thabo Majola and Amos failed to do so. The Labour Department has taken a keen interest in their cases, and the fund will be initiating the claims to assist the men. For more on this, I'm joined by Compensation Fund Commissioner Vuyo Mafata. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time. Perhaps take us through the process very briefly. An employee gets injured at work. What should happen?
Well, when an employee gets injured at work, the first thing that needs to happen is they need to report it to the employer. And this needs to be reported to the employer as soon as the employer becomes aware of the incident that has taken place. He has about 7 days to make sure that they submit a notification of accident report to the compensation fund. And together with that, they would then need to send the injured worker for medical treatment. As soon as the worker has received medical treatment, we then need to get the first medical report from the treating practitioner, submitted through the employer, so that we can then be able to make a determination on whether we accept liability for paying the claim or not.
Now, as our program Checkpoint discovered, and you subsequently did an in-local inspection at the two places of employment, none of what you said should happen actually happened in the case of these two workers.
You're right, Vuyo. None of these happened because the employers did not report the incident. And the workers also weren't aware of their rights where an employer does not register the incident. So in such instances, they would have had to have come to the nearest Department of Labour offices themselves to then notify us of the accident, so that we can then send our inspectors to the employer, where they will then compel the employer to register the claim. And in an event that the employer fails to register the claim after the inspector has visited, along with the enforcement processes that would have to be initiated, we then take it from there and work with the injured worker to make sure that the claim gets registered and we can be able to assess the claim.
Were you able to establish why in these two instances their employers didn't do what they're supposed to do?
I think in both instances it's clear abdication of their responsibilities. There is no reason why the employers ought not to have registered.
What could have been the reasons?
Well, there is the COIT legislation by itself. There's some provisions that somehow incentivizes employers not to comply and register claims, because we have a provision in the law that says if an employer keeps a safer working environment, that type of employer would then qualify for rebates and reduced levies that they would have to pay. So in an effort to try and score from getting reduced rebates, a lot of employers don't register their claims, and we come across a number of these incidents from time to time.
But do you in your system then take that into account? In other words, recognizing the fact that you give employers an incentive to not report these incidents. I'm not saying you're doing this deliberately. Do you then check what have you put in place to ensure that there are no unintended unintended consequences, as has been the case in this particular instance?
That is why we don't only wait for the employer to register the claim. One of the things we're saying that if within 7 days the employer has not registered the claim, the worker himself or herself needs to come forward to the compensation fund or to the nearest Department of Labour office and inform us of the incidents that has taken place.
What are you going to do with these two?
Well, we have already started enforcement processes. I think both workplaces, we have had our occupational health and safety inspectors visiting the employer's premises. In fact, with one, we've already issued contravention notices, and we are now preparing, the chief inspector is preparing the matter to be handed over to the prosecuting authorities.
So you're basically taking them to court?
That's what we'll be doing.
To what end? What do you hope to achieve, or what relief will you be seeking?
Well, that's non-compliance, so the law, they need to be dealt with according to the letter of the law because they have not complied with the occupational health and safety legislation as well as the compensation for occupational injuries and diseases. But concurrently, we're also now working with the claimants, with the injured workers themselves to make sure that their claims gets assessed. We have obtained the information that the employers failed to submit to us in both the cases. We're now working to make sure that we can assess the claims and they can get what's rightfully due to them.
Well, thanks to Checkpoint, we know of Thabo and Amos's cases, but there could be many Thabos and Amoses out there.
There's many of them. That is why we launched a campaign at the beginning of June, where we call it the Last Call campaign, where we are calling on all workers, injured workers, or any other person who may have sustained occupational injury or a disease in the workplace and the matter may have not been reported or may have been reported, but the process was never completed because of missing documentation that was never submitted. We've given people until the end of August to come forward and submit this information so that we can be able to assess their claims and make a decision on these claims. We are hoping that we will then attract a lot of people that would come forward because we do see these kind of cases from time to time, and we believe that this is going to help many people who would not have known what to do because their employer has not complied with what they needed to do.
Now, that's a call you've made, but have you ever done any research or survey, just even if it's just to establish just how widespread this problem might be?
Well, we haven't done a formal survey. All we've seen is from assessment of the internal assessment of the kind of calls we get through our call center and a lot of the queries that we get from claimants. And also when you look at, we actually investigated what are some of the reasons that lead to delays in processing claims and us also not dealing with some of the claims. And it mainly deals with the fact that we don't get all the information that we need to get from the employers if they do report the claims at all.
That's what we're going to leave it. Thanks very much for coming through. Vuyo Mafata, who is a commissioner for the Labour Department's Compensation Fund. Thanks to our program Checkpoint.